Matapos ang kanyang naging kampanya sa Miami Open, muling magbabalik aksyon ang Filipina tennis ace si Alex Eala sa Linz Open sa Austria, ang kanyang unang torneo sa clay court ngayong season. Matatandaang nagtapos sa isang round of 16 exit ang kampanya ni Eala sa kanyang muling pagsalang.
Alex had not played a single point in Austria yet. She had not even checked into her hotel. But the second she walked through that airport, Philippine flags went up, cameras came out, and the noise hit levels that most tennis players only hear after winning a title. The WTA was watching. And honestly, some of them had to be uncomfortable. So, do you think Alex Eala can make a serious run on clay this season, or is it too early to call it? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Let's start with what actually happened at that airport, because the video tells a story that no ranking graphic can fully capture. March 25th and 26th, Linz, Austria. Alex Eala steps into the arrivals area and is immediately met with a wall of Filipino flags, cameras pushed 2 and 3 rows deep, and supporters shouting her name loud enough to fill a hallway that was clearly not built for this kind of energy. She had not hit a ball on Austrian soil yet. The draw had not even been released. The tournament did not start until April 6th. And yet the welcome she received looked like someone had just won something. It looked like a homecoming. It looked like a city receiving a person it had already decided was important before she arrived to prove it. That is not a normal thing in tennis. That is not how this sport usually works. Tennis is a sport that tends to reward you after the fact. You win the match, then people cheer. You upset the top seed, then the cameras find you. You lift the trophy, then the headlines follow. The sequence is almost always results first, recognition second. What happened in Linz flipped that entirely. The recognition came before the first serve. The atmosphere said she mattered before a single point was played. And that shift, that change in the order of things is exactly what makes this story worth paying attention to. She walked into that airport as the world number 29, which is already a remarkable place for a 20-year-old to be sitting. But the people waving those flags were not reacting to a ranking number. They were reacting to everything she has become over the past several months. A name that travels ahead of her. A player whose presence changes the temperature of any event she enters. And a story that has clearly outgrown the sport's usual channels for discovering new talent. Now, let's be honest about where she was coming from because the full picture matters here. Just days before those airport videos started spreading, Eala had walked off a court in Miami after a 0-6-26 loss to Carolina Mucha in the round of 16. That is a rough scoreline by any standard. No sets, barely any games. The kind of result that can make a good week feel like it ended badly and leave a player second-guessing everything she built over the previous 2 matches. It was a hard afternoon. But here is the thing. The 2 matches before that loss were not small. On March 19th, she came through a 3-set battle against Laura Siegemund, winning 67-63-63. On March 21st, she beat Magdala Linette 63-76. 2 wins in Miami at that level against those opponents is a legitimate week of tennis. The mooch of a match stung, but it did not erase what came before it. And Eala knew that. After the loss, she said she left the court a little disappointed, which is completely normal, but that she was overall very happy with her performance that week. She also said Miami would always have a special place in her heart. First sunshine double done, she called it. That is the language of someone who can absorb a painful ending without letting it rewrite the whole story. She filed it away, kept the parts worth keeping, and pointed herself toward Austria. That response matters more than people give it credit for. Plenty of players at 20 years old let a bad loss follow them into the next week. The score haunts the practice sessions. The confidence takes a hit that shows up later in tight moments. Eala moved on from Miami in a way that was noticeably clean and direct. She reset, confirmed her schedule, and a few days later, she was walking through an Austrian airport into a wall of flags. The Miami run also had context that is worth noting. Before it, she had put together strong weeks in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, then a breakthrough stretch in Indian Wells, then Miami's round of 16. The trajectory across the opening months of 2026 has been consistent in a way that is genuinely hard to ignore. Different cities, different draws, different conditions, and the results keep pointing in the same direction. That is not a hot streak. That is a career-building altitude and learning how to stay there. Which makes Lind a very interesting next chapter, the Upper Austria Ladies. Lind's Open runs from April 6th to 12th at the Design Center. Lands and 2026 marks the first time in the tournament's history that it is being played on indoor clay. The event has been running since 1987 on indoor hardcourt. This year it converted to clay, which means everyone showing up for this tournament is dealing with a new surface identity. Not just the players, but the event itself. Enters as one of the highest-ranked names in a 28-player field. The draw was expected around April 3rd. So, she arrives as a top name at a clay event that is itself figuring out what it wants to be in its new format. For a player who has been building on hard court and is now pivoting into her clay season, Lind is a first of many things at once. First, WTA 500 clay event. First appearance on indoor clay at this level. First test of whether what she has built on hard courts translates when the bounce slows down and the surface demands a different kind of patience. That is a real question. It would be lazy to pretend otherwise. The losses to Linda Noskova in Indian Wells and to Mucha in Miami, both of those were on hard courts and they were both fairly one-sided. The step up into this clay environment comes with genuine uncertainty attached. Indoor clay is its own thing. The ball sits a little heavier. Movement patterns change. Some players who dominate on hard court struggle to find their rhythm when the pace drops and the rallies stretch out. It is a fair thing to wonder about. But that question is exactly why the airport scene carries so much weight. The people who traveled to Linz, waited at arrivals, pulled out flags from the Philippines, and cheered for a 20-year-old tennis player before she had hit a single ball on Austrian soil. They were not reacting to a surface or a draw or a projected first-round opponent. They were reacting to what she represents. And that kind of backing does not just feel good in the moment. It changes what is possible. It creates an energy in the building that opponents have to walk into without having. It means she is never playing in an empty room even when the crowd is split. That is armor. Genuine armor. And the man who knows her game better than almost anyone has been very clear about what this moment requires. Joan Bosch is Eala's traveling coach. He has been with her through this rise, managing her development through the wins and the tough losses. Building the habits that have gotten her to world number 29 at 20 years old. And his standard for what comes next is not gentle. He has said plainly, we cannot stay at the same level. That is not a motivational speech. That is a coach telling his player that the comfort zone is the danger zone and that every new stage demands a new version of the player walking onto the court. Indoor clay at a WTA 500 is exactly the kind of new stage he is talking about. It is not asking her to be brilliant immediately. It is asking her to compete, to adjust, to handle the first uncomfortable moments of a new surface with the same composure she showed after Miami. And if the airport was any indication, the belief around her is not wavering. The expectation is growing. The question is whether she can meet it with results. Because belief and results need to start feeding each other. Right now, the belief is loud and visible and real. The results have been trending upward, but have not yet produced that one defining moment on the biggest stage. The week where everything comes together and the performance matches the energy that follows her everywhere. Lind might not be that week, or it could be exactly that week. Indoor clay, new format, one of the top seeds in the field, a crowd that already knows her name before she serves. The ingredients are all there. Here is what a win in the opening round at Linz actually does to the narrative. Not a final, not a title run, just a composed, professional first-round win on this new surface. It immediately stops the can-she-handle-clay conversation before it even fully starts. It frames her as someone who transitions between surfaces without losing form. It tells every other player in the draw that the girl from the airport is not just a good story. She is a problem to prepare for. And the road beyond Lindt only gets bigger. The European clay season runs through some of the most important events on the calendar: Madrid, Rome, and eventually Roland Garros. If she builds confidence in Austria and carries it forward, the clay swing could become the stretch of the season where her ranking takes another serious step. But even before Madrid or Paris become relevant conversations, Linz is the test that proves she can show up in a new environment, absorb the pressure of expectation, and perform. The scene at that airport was one of the most striking images tennis has produced in a long time. Not because airports are dramatic settings, but because of what it revealed about where this player sits in the sport right now. She is 20 years old, ranked 29th in the world, and fans are traveling from their communities to wave flags in European arrival halls before she has even touched the court. The WTA has a lot of players. Very few of them produce that. Some people inside the sport have been watching her rise with admiration. Some have been watching it with something closer to discomfort. Because when a player starts pulling this kind of attention, not after a Grand Slam, not after a year-end championship, but mid-season at 20 years old, it starts to reorganize how the sport's attention gets distributed. And reorganization is never comfortable for the people who benefited from the old arrangement. The WTA has been searching for new faces to carry the sport forward for a while now. The names that dominated a generation ago are either retired or approaching the end. New stars have emerged, but the global spread of genuine star power, the kind that crosses borders and brings entirely new audiences into contact with the sport, that is rare. What it represents for the Philippines, for Southeast Asia, for every fan who sees themselves in someone who does not fit the traditional template of a tennis star that goes beyond rankings and results. It is the beginning of a different kind of reach for the sport. And the WTA knows it. The tournaments know it. The broadcasters know it. The players walking into Linz who saw those airport videos on their phones know it, too. Whether they say it or not.
The story is only going to get louder.